What are you Tinder date horror stories? Went to dinner, all was going well, she seemed okay until she noticed my scar on the far side of my collarbone. I tell her it was from a car accident when 3 of my ribs broke, doesn't look super bad but is noticeable. She asks how big the scar is. I reluctantly tell her it goes down to around my bell button. She made an EW face and said, oh. She then proceeded to go use the restroom and never came back. After around 15 minutes I realized what had happened but decided to stay and eat. My waitress got to the table with the girl's food and asked where my date was. I tell her she ditched after using the restroom excuse. She proceeds to apologize that someone would do that to me and asks if she can join me for dinner as she was about to clock out. I tell her of course. She seems very kind and cute. After talking for a while we really clicked and exchanged contact info. We've now been together for 3 years. She's so beautiful and kind and honestly the best thing that ever happened to me, all thanks to the shitty Tinder girl. So thank you Ashley. Showed up and she said, you're a lot shorter in person, never recovered after that one boys. I, 19F at the time, now 20, went on 2 dates with this guy, 21M at the time. Second date totally put me off, he was way too intense, and few days go by of texting. He admits that he has fallen in love with me. I, obviously overwhelmed, ask for some space with intent to let him down easy. He non-stop messages me, and I ask him for a couple of days with no contact. He gives me literally 2 days with no messaging, then goes back to his spamming. He starts telling me that he wants to be a priority over my best friend. I now tell him to leave me alone. He starts commenting on old pics of mine. I end up blocking him. Few months go by, I unblock him to see that he got engaged. Lucky girl. After the first date he asked if he could move in, lock my car and sleep in front of my house. Not joking. About a year ago, I matched with a girl and we hit it off very well. Got her Snapchat after an hour of talking to her and started chatting on that. We had the same interests and she seemed very cool. I worked super late one day and didn't text her all day because I was busy. I get done with work and see she messaged me, if you want to be my boyfriend, I need you to actually show you need me. Whoa, I haven't even met you yet. I slow down messaging thinking I'm going too fast until one day she asks, do you even want to be with me? I care about you so much and you don't seem to want me. Again, I have never met this girl at this point. I proceed to do the right thing and tell her, I don't think we're in the same mindset, I'm sorry, we should just stop talking and move on. Few minutes later, I'll drive up to meet you at your place. She's never met me, I have never given her my address. I realized she found my address through the Snapchat map. I block her immediately. The next day I went to a hardware store and bought myself another bolt for my door that I still use today. Took the train to a first date, someone jumped in front. Having to postpone a date because someone killed themselves is not a good beginning. She didn't believe me and unmatched me. She spent the entire 2-hour dinner date comparing me to her recently dead husband. I fingered this girl and had her leave shortly after because I just wasn't feeling it. Suddenly I started realize a very potent sour smell. Her phone buzzes, she ignores it. It buzzes again, she reads it, chuckles, looks around the cafe and out the windows. I say what's up, and she shows me, *OMG are you okay? My thoughts were her friends either thought I was a psychopath, creep, murderer, really ugly, or she was in a date she couldn't get out of. That was my first date about a year after my engagement ended, and my last, it was in early 2016. A bit of a gut punch, total confidence killer. Before our first date, the guy FaceTimes me high on Ambien, demanding to see my feet. Most ironic part was that he was a sleep medicine physician. Never actually getting a date from Tinder. 1. I drive 100 miles to go out for coffee with a guy. He takes me to a chain coffee place that is rubbish, order 2 coffees and declines food, goes to pay with his card and it's rejected due to insufficient funds. I pay and then question him and he tells me that in his last breakup he's been living on his brother's couch and has borrowed his car to get there today. His life was a mess and he wasn't doing anything about making it any better, just looking for a new girl to get him out of his brother's house. I wouldn't be that girl. He tried messaging me for weeks saying how much he wanted to be with me after our half hour of taking, until he finally got the message and left me alone. He was mad though. 2. Booked the most expensive restaurant in town for dinner. I got to his place on time and he didn't answer the door, or his phone. After about half an hour of waiting he finally opened the door and said he'd been asleep. At 4 in the afternoon on a weekend. We got to the restaurant late and almost missed our booking. He then tells me he left his wallet at home. Complains about the menu and orders a $50 steak, medium well, complains about the wait. Finally gets his steak and complains it's too pink. The server comes to check if it's all okay as he hasn't eaten any, and he says it's fine, so I end up paying for a $50 steak that he didn't even eat or send back, and just complained about. I then dropped him back to his place and he got pissy that I wouldn't come in for sex. He promised me he'd shout the next meal. I never saw him again. On purpose. 3. Another one. We'd had a few dates and gone away for the weekend. At our hotel he decides to tell me, honestly, like a good person, that I am fatter than my photos and he wouldn't have ever gone out with me if he really knew. But now it's too late and we're the only people in this hotel room, so he may as well have sex with me. No mate. There are so many more, but those were the first that come to me. Unbelievably, after number 2 there, I agreed to one last date before deleting the app because I'd been talking to another guy for a few months. I thought he deserved the chance to meet before I just disappeared. We have now been together almost 5 years. So it was worth going through all that to find him. Guy had a hat on in his profile picture but was actually mega bald, NBD in itself, but he looked so different. Voice reminded me of a cross between one of my cousins and Ted from Scrubs. 0 spark. He insisted on making dinner anyway and sent me home with leftovers. I got diarrhea from dinner, so I tossed the leftovers. I went on a date with some girl in a kind of hipster Y bar, and it was going pretty well, but about halfway through some woman I vaguely recognized came in, obviously extremely drunk or otherwise intoxicated. She kind of stumbled in, and then looked at me and screamed, "I know you." "Who are you?" I was racking my brain trying to figure out where I knew her from when I realized she was my estate agent, so I said, "You're my estate agent," to mild bemusement from my date. Anyway, my estate agent, Joe, ended up grabbing a drink and I kind of thought that would be the end of things. But she insisted on joining my date and trying to dominate the conversation with numerous unfunny anecdotes and side remarks. Anyway, I think my date got pretty fed up with the situation and ended up leaving, which was fair enough, but I was pretty pissed off. Anyway, Joe apologized a few times and said we should go out to another bar and she would buy me a few drinks. I didn't want the night to be a total waste, so she ended up buying me a fuck ton of drinks. I was about 20 and she was about 29, so she had a lot more money than me and bought all the drinks. We ended up kissing and engaging in some heavy petting, when eventually she said, "Oh shit. It's so late. My husband is going to be furious," at which point I just decided to call it a night and bail. Funny girl, seemed like she had a pretty fun life. First date ever. The girl proceeds to, for like 50% of the date, brag about all the drugs she had used. And no, it's not the light stuff. We're talking meth, LSD, party pills and what sounded like cocaine. She also low-key catfished me since she was a lot thicker than in her picture. A self-destructing girl. Kinda glad she didn't go nuts on me. A year later I see her popping up on Tinder. She had changed her looks and changed her actual name. Hung out with a guy once and told him I'd get dinner with him later that week, but that I had a busy schedule. I was feeling sick the next day and told him I might not be able to hang out that night, and then I was in class and rugby practice, so I didn't check my phone for about 2 hours and I told him I'd be away from my phone. I look at my phone afterwards and see upwards of 10 missed calls, FaceTimes and lots of texts. I respond and tell him that I was in class and he goes, "Oh okay." I tell him I'm gonna shower off after practice and that I'm feeling sick but maybe we can hang after I get ready. I shower for maybe 10 minutes, come back to 10 more missed calls. I tell him sorry, I was in the shower, and that I was feeling too sick to hang out. 10 minutes later he goes, "Can I bring by a care package I brought for you?" I'm weirded out but feel bad saying no, so I tell him to bring it by a general spot on campus, not my dorm specifically. He comes by and I say hi and go back to my room, and afterwards he continues to send weird, possessive texts and Instagram messages. Sometime in this time I change a picture on my Tinder account and he texts me asking why I would do that after we were doing so well. That's the tipping point for me. I block his number and Instagram after he continues to call all the time, lie about his plans, tries to manipulate me into hanging out, and tell me how I'm just not whimsical enough for him. Still don't really know what prompted that. A few days later I get a Skype notification he found my goddamn Skype account. We had hung out once and only gotten lunch.